Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to make another German classic, which is also from my grandmother's recipe collection. And this time it's going to be a fluffy and moist poppy seed roll with delicious crunchy crumbles. For that I'm going to make a yeast dough, and don't be afraid, I'll walk you through it and you'll see how easy that is. For the yeast dough I need flour, milk and yeast, sugar, butter and a pinch of salt. I start by dissolving the yeast in about 70 ml of milk, and I also put in 1 tablespoon of sugar to get the yeast activated. With yeast it's all about temperature. When the temperature is too cold, yeast takes longer to wake up and get active. And if the temperature is too warm, then yeast is gonna die. The temperature yeast likes the most is 32 degrees of Celsius or 89 degrees of Fahrenheit. If you don't have a thermometer and you don't know if you got it right, think about the temperature of a warm and fuzzy swimming pool. You wouldn't hesitate to jump in. In the middle of the bowl I form a slight hollow to make room for the yeast sugar milk mixture. Then I fill the liquid into my little flour crater, and then I gently start stirring until some of the flour gets mixed up with the yeast and it starts thickening up a little. So don't worry about how much of that flour falls into the crater. This is really not important. When it gets too thick, just stop stirring. And don't worry about the lumps, we get rid of them later. The reason why we do that anyway is, one part of the dough is butter. And always when butter is involved, you need to give the yeast a kickstart by feeding it with sugar and flour. The milk, by the way, just works as the meeting room that provides the right temperature and environment to let yeast, sugar and flour mingle and grow. As you see, I just mixed in some of the flour. It's still kinda soupy, and now I just cover it with a lid and let it rest for about 15 minutes at room temperature. If your room temperature is colder than 22 degrees, put the dough in the oven with a covered lid and only turn the lights on. Here is the before and after. The yeast dough has doubled in size and is now ready to take on all the other ingredients. If you live in a country where your room temperatures are higher, then this process may take way less than the aforementioned 15 minutes. As I said before, it's all about the temperature. So once we put in all the other ingredients, we can start kneading. Kneading is important to develop the gluten structure, and that makes your dough elastic and your cake fluffy. Doesn't matter what you knead it with, it could be with a stand mixer, a hand mixer or with your hands. What you knead it with is not important, but the time is. The dough should be kneaded for at least 8 up to 10 minutes. After that time the gluten structure has developed nicely and doesn't stick anymore. So I take my dough and I form a nice ball by bringing the edges to the center point. That also creates some tension on the surface. So now my dough ball goes back into the bowl, and then it needs to be covered to keep it from drying out. For that you could use a lid or a plastic foil. So the warmest place to let my dough rise is the oven. I just turn on the lights, which are going to provide enough heat for that. And then I close the door, just not completely, so that the warm air has a way out. I let it rise for 40 minutes, and after that time the volume should have doubled. In the meantime, I can prepare my poppy seed filling. If your poppy seeds are not grounded, you need to ground them yourself. For that you can either use a high-speed mixer, a spice mill or a coffee mill. The easiest way though is to buy them grounded. The other ingredients are milk, cornstarch, sugar, a little bit of vanilla extract and a pinch of salt. I use roughly 100 ml of the milk, and I mix first the cornstarch, the sugar and the salt to make it easier for me to get rid of any lumps. So once I made sure all the lumps are gone, I fill up with the rest of the milk and put in the poppy seeds. Then I flavor it with some vanilla extract, which harmonizes perfectly with the poppy seeds. And then I put it on the stove and bring it up to a boil. This may take 3 or 4 minutes, just don't leave it alone, you need to constantly stir to prevent it from getting burned. Once the poppy seed pudding is bubbling up, I shut off the heat and I let it bubble away for another minute or so. I fill the pudding in a bowl to let it cool down, and then I cover it with a cling film to prevent it from forming a crust on the surface. After around 35 minutes, I take out my yeast dough, which has risen beautifully. The volume has more than doubled in size, and have a look at all the air pockets. So I slightly dust the countertop with some flour before I roll it out and bring it in shape of a rectangle. Before I do that, I just briefly knead the dough again, but only for a minute, just to get a feel of the elasticity and to create some tension on the surface. The kneading technique is the same as I used before, I just bring the edges to the center point. I dust the dough with some flour and then I start rolling it out in shape of a rectangle. So I don't want the rectangle too big and not too small, and to check that, I prepared a piece of parchment paper the size of my baking sheet, and that's what my rectangle should match. When I roughly ended up with the size I wanted to, then I just pull slightly on the edges and the corners to bring it even closer to a rectangle shape. Final check, size is perfect. Now I can put on my poppy seed filling, which has cooled down a little and is not boiling hot anymore. I evenly distributed all over the dough except for one stripe of about 3 to 4 centimeters, which is 1.5 inches. So time to roll it up. I grab the upper edges and start rolling it towards me. And that rolling worked so smoothly and perfect that I just rolled out of the picture frame. So here's the poppy seed roll. It looks nice and it's quite heavy, so just be a little careful when you lift it up to put it on the baking sheet. Onto the crumbles, and for that we need flour, butter, sugar, a pinch of salt and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. You can put all the ingredients together in the bowl and you start roughly mixing for about 2 minutes, but you can easily do that by hand as well. When it comes to forming crumbles, your hands are the best tools. I wanted to have bigger crumbles, and when the crumbles got too small, I just form kind of a dough ball and then I pull pieces off with my fingers and make the crumbles bigger. To make the crumbles stick, I brush the roll with water and then I just put the crumbles loosely all over the surface. Now my poppy roll goes into the oven for 50 minutes at 170 degrees of Celsius or 340 degrees of Fahrenheit. I ended up giving it 5 minutes more in the oven until the color had a nice golden brown shade. Don't be shocked that the roll had gotten really big, that's perfectly normal and how it's supposed to be. And now it's time to cool down for about 1 hour. So my poppy seed roll chilled for an hour, and the final thing to do is finish up with a lemon sugar coating. To get the ratio right, depends on the size of the lemon and how juicy the lemon is. So I advise you to put all the powdered sugar in a bowl and just add half of the lemon juice. Mix it together and see how it turns out. If it's too thick, add more lemon juice. And if it's too runny, just add some more powdered sugar. However, the end result should look like this. With a teaspoon, I put the sugar coating in a diagonal pattern all over the poppy seed roll. Isn't it beautiful? I can't wait to have a look on the inside. By cutting in, I feel the crunchiness of the crumbles and I also feel the softness and the fluffiness on the inside. And the poppy seed pattern is just wow! See how fluffy and soft the inside is? This proves once more, grandmother's recipes are simply the best. Well, that's it for today. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, give it a thumbs up and show me some love by smashing the subscribe button. If you want to have more of these videos, just click on the bell and you get notified every time a new video is coming up. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!